Hello everyone, my name is Ronaldine de Rivera, the first reporter of Group 5. So, I am tasked to report about the Restoration period. So, one of the most important and interesting aspects of literature is the way that it both responds to and is inevitably shaped by the political context in which it is written. So, the best one of the best one is the Restoration period, which I am going to discuss today. So restoration period lasted from 1660 to around 1688. Restoration comes from the crowning of Charles II, which marks the restoring of the traditional English monarchical form of government, following a short period of rule by a handful of republican governments. The writings of this time are both innovative and varied. The style and subject matter of the literature produced during the Restoration period spanned the spectrum from definitively religious to satirical and risque. In 1688, James II and Charles II's brother was removed from the throne, which many scholars used to mark the end of Restoration literature. So the highlights in this period is that England marked the return of the monarchy under King Charles II after the brief rule of Oliver Cromwell. Additionally, this period witnessed a cultural flourishing known as the Restoration Comedy, exemplified by the playwrights like William Congreve and John Dryden.
Philosophical context. So when we say philosophical context, it is the start of the Restoration period roughly coincides with the beginning of what is known as the Enlightenment, which lasted until the end of the 18th century. The Enlightenment was defined by an emphasis on reason and logic. The thinkers of the period, moreover, helped develop the modern science that treats the natural world as a knowable and testable subject. Although the influence of the Enlightenment on the Restoration period is tremendous, it's important to note the humility towards human reason that is common to much Restoration literature. Many Restoration writers viewed the changes to their government and the violence that these changes brought with them as a direct result of those who dogmatically held to their ideology. In this sense, the political events that occurred in England provide insight into the skepticism that is at the heart of the Restoration literature.
Theater and poetry. Theater is one of the most significant aspects of Restoration literature. As a result of the influence of religious and political leaders who believed it to be sinful, theater had been closed for 18 years. Charles II was a big fan of drama and quickly allowed and encouraged the theater presence. During this period, they saw many innovations in theater, including the important new genre called Restoration Comedy. Restoration Comedy was frequently crass, largely sexual, and often focused on the interactions of the elite members of English society. These are the popular writers of Restoration Comedy: John Dryden, George Etheridge, and William Congreve. Although Restoration literature is commonly considered to end around 1688, Restoration Comedy was written into the. Next is poetry. Poetry was strongly influenced by the political context of the mid-17th century. Restoration poetry focused more on the glory and powerful potential of human beings to understand and improve the world. Many poets attempted to outline ways to live and write and praise the importance of thinking for oneself. Many poets cited the importance of learning from Greek and Roman poets, and some became famous for their translation of ancient poetry. Restoration literature is incredibly diverse and includes many poets who produced poetry that attempted to guide people back to traditional religion as well as stringing satire. So first writer in poetry is Jonathan Swift from 1667 to 1745. He wrote a modest proposal which is a bitter pamphlet, Gulliver's Travels, a satire human folly and stupidity. Second writer is Alexander Pope from 1688 to 1744. He published an exposition of the rules of the classical school in the form of a poem, an essay on criticism. Third writer is Thomas Gray from 1716 to 1771. He wrote Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard, which is a collection of 18th century commonplaces expressing concern for lowly folk. Number 4 is Henry Fielding from 1707 to 1754 is known for his Tom Jones, which tells the story of a young foundling who is driven from his adopted home, wanders to London, and eventually for all his suffering wins his lady. 5 is Lawrence Sterne from 1713 to 1768, wrote Tristram Shandy, a novel in 9 volumes showcasing a series of loosely organized funny episodes in the life of Shandy. And last, Oliver Goldsmith from 1728 to 74. She wrote She Stoops to Conquer, a comedy of manners that satirizes the 18th century aristocracy who is overly class conscious.